So I'm at a crossroads here because I want to ask about trauma, but I'm also so interested in really wanting to know because I had this insight since I think look, just about a year now. I was reflecting on how I first met you in New York City, the workshop, and I think 2009. And I
Hmm.
remembered you were Dennis Menerick was there, and
Yes.
you were a little bit more like him back then, if I recall correctly, because he was not looking to have a conversation, not with a goofy 19-year-old who's just way too excited for no reason, I'm sure. You know, and you know, I remember talking to you a few times, and you were kind of stolid and very, serious, not stern at all, and still warm. But I recall back then your message was much more focused on process and being rigorous. Like you were quite strict about how you talk about diet and the nasty influence of sugar. And I noticed, I think in the last, I guess, maybe 2, 3 years, you've been perhaps much more open and warm about it's a process. You really don't need to develop intuitive abilities. You can make mistakes and still lower your entropy. And do you think that's a realistic perception, or am I just?
I
And
think
how do you feel
that's
you've changed?
yeah, that's probably true. I don't think it's just been in the last couple of years, but it's probably something that comes with maturity, right? I can look at myself back when I was 20 something and a young physicist, in graduate school, and if I look at myself now, then I'd say I was arrogant. I thought I knew everything. There was lots of things I didn't know, but I thought I knew everything. So I'd look back and I'd see an arrogant young physicist who thought he knew everything or most everything that was important anyway. But you grow up and you realize that that's not so, and eventually you realize that there's a whole lot of things that you don't know, and that's okay too. You just keep learning and you keep chugging along and learning, and you get a lot less judgmental as you grow up. You kind of let people be however they are, and that's okay. And one of the one of the things that I probably have over the last decade been working on is trying not to what should I say? Not to be more helpful than was helpful. When you try to help people, don't you have to realize where they are, and they can only take one small step from wherever it is they are. And if where they want to be is 4 or 5 steps away, well, there just isn't much point in talking about that 4 or 5 steps, because they got to go through the next 3 steps before they get to 4 and 5. They just have to do that. So you have to kind of not say too much. People can't process it. If you say, "Oh well, that's not hard. All you got to do is step 2, 3, 4, and 5, and there you are. Look, it's easy." That's not helpful. People get that, and they can't use it. So it would be much better to say, "Well, you're on step 1. Let's let's see if we can help you get to 2, and just forget about 3, 4, and 5. You can do those later. Just do that." So it's a matter of not being too helpful, because if you try too hard to be helpful, you're actually not so helpful. That's what I mean by to try to be so helpful that you're not helpful at all. That's the problem. You have to know when to quit. What not to say is as important as what to say. You can't tell people too much because they can't process that much. And if you give them too much, you might as well not say anything at all, because they're just confused. So then you say a lot less, and you know, not because you don't care, and not because you feel like you couldn't help them, but you just realize you're not helping them. So you don't try to fix people beyond where they are. Give them a few hints here and there, but trying to be too expansive on the pathway forward is really not helpful. You need to let everybody be where they are, and the only way to get there for most people is to struggle. They got to struggle their way to wherever it is they're going to get. And if I give them something that helps them get there intellectually, well, that's really not that much of a help. And then it makes them feel bad about themselves because they see the intellectual solution, but they can't implement the intuitive solution. They can't implement the being level solution. But now they see the intellectual solution. Now they don't feel good about themselves because they see where they need to be and they see where they are and they can't bridge the gap. So then that's not helpful. So it's that kind of thing. It's teaching is a very difficult business, and it really needs to be one-on-one. If it's one-on-one, then you can say things that are good for an individual. But when you're talking to 20 people, it's really hard to say things that are real helpful to everybody. Those people who are right on the edge of getting step 5, well, they need to hear this. Those that are still struggling with step 2, well, they need to hear that. But your audience is full of all kinds of people. They're everywhere. So it's difficult to talk to people in a group and not just stay up kind of in the air a little, so that everybody gets a little something out of it, but it's not that useful really to anybody. It tends to be that way. One-on-one's easier, but one-on-one you don't get very far. You're not going to help very many people if you only talk to one person at a time. You'll get old and die before you've talked to more than 150 people. Which is not going to change the world very easily. So it's so those are some of the things I struggle with. Is it's probably harder to figure out what not to say than it is to figure out what to say. There's lots of things I could say, but I try not to say too much. I don't want to discourage people. I don't want people to think, well, I'm right here, and Tom Campbell, he's way out there someplace. I'll never get out there. That's just too far to go. So why should I even start?
And I think a lot of people feel that way. But I think everyone sees you as someone who's really far along and has a great deal of experience, maybe has been a spiritual guide in certain lifetimes on certain different continents and subcontinents. People speculate. But what can you say to people who have a sense of terminal inferiority?
Well, I don't know. I could pull up the Chinese saying is a journey of 10,000 steps starts with the single step. That's something out of Taoism. But you have to start from wherever you are and go. Don't be intimidated by the fact that you've got a long way to go. And I know one way to think about it is you always are going to have a long way to go, no matter where you are. 50 years from now, you'll still have a long way to go. I still have a long way to go. There's still things to do. There's ways to grow. There's things that you could do to be helpful. It just happens at different levels and so on. So there's always things to learn. And so you might as well just learn what's next and try to learn that really well and then get to the next one, and you'll end up wherever you end up. Don't set a goal for yourself of I want to do to this goal. I want to get to that goal. Just your goal should be to learn the next thing. Yeah. What is the next thing that you need to learn? If that takes you 5 years to really learn that, well, take 5 years and learn it. Because if you skip the next thing, it's going to be a problem from then on. So you just work on the next thing and work on that till you really got it good, and then move on to the next thing after that. Just don't be intimidated. There's always going to be somebody else that's better than you and other people that are a whole lot worse than you. You're always going to find yourself somewhere with those that are above and those that are below. Look at the ones below and learn from them, because you see the struggles that you've had and you see them going through things, and that maybe will give you some aha moments when you look at yourself and you say, oh yeah, I remember when I was doing that, when I was like that. Yeah. And that helps with some of your understanding. And when you look at those other people, well, you don't have to be like them. You'll be whoever you are. And it just see other people who are more grown up than you just as kind of proof that you can get more grown up. Okay. So I know I still have some headroom. Yeah. I haven't hit the top yet. I've got some headroom. So I'll keep on going. So I've always kind of looked at life that way. That's why I didn't particularly worry that I couldn't remember how old I was, or where my right arm was, or things like that. It's just, doesn't matter. I didn't see that as a big problem. Just deal with it. Deal with it and keep on going. Now, again, that probably comes from a lot of self-confidence. I didn't see any of those as problems. It's just the way I was, so you deal with it.
So in dealing with, I think we all want to find out what are those things that we ought to choose to work on in ourselves, maybe particular challenges or difficulties. Sometimes you'll talk about them as rather huge categories, it sounds like to me, or huge problems like inadequacy, fear, and insecurity, um, or fear of rejection. That I think is so broad that it I think would be difficult for people to get a handle on it. So since it's in vogue and remarkably effective, we've spoken about before EMDR, which is a method, a modality of finding some way, broadly speaking, to grow yourself by dealing with traumatic or disturbing past experiences. Now, if it's the case that certain of our experiences we get as specialized lessons, or that the experiences we have can serve as lessons, do you think it's wise for us to, dredge up these painful memories in order to get through them? Like, is this like a storehouse for lessons for us? Or is that a fast track to belief-based victimization, self-victimization?
Yeah, I think it could be both. I think for most people, I would not suggest that. I would say that if you dredge up all those things and you're ready to let them go, you're ready to go beyond them. Well, dredging them up, looking at them and saying, I don't need that anymore. That is not, that maybe defined me then, but that doesn't define me now. That doesn't define my future at all. And if you're ready to let go of it, then it's okay to pull that stuff up and say goodbye to it. But if you're not ready and you pull all that stuff up, you're just going to make yourself feel worse. You're going to pull up all that junk and you're going to look at it and you're going to say, geez, I'm a mess. I'm really a mess, and that's not helpful. That's that erodes your self-confidence, to do that. So it depends on whether you're ready to let go of it or not. So if you're right on the edge of it and you feel like you're letting it go and you're going beyond it, dredging it up to look at it and say, okay, I can see where that came from. Yeah, I can see where that came from. I had I I lived a very tentative existence for a long time. So I didn't know whether, I was, this or that for a long time. My life was just very tentative. And I got a grip now. So I can look at all that and have a lot of compassion for that young guy who had all those struggles, but that's not me anymore. I'm past that. And then go on. So then looking at it and seeing the perspective of what had you trapped and why you were trapped could be beneficial. But just dredging stuff up, hoping that you'll somehow get through it, is probably more likely to hurt than it is to help. If you're ready to get through it, okay. But if you're not ready to get through it, it's just going to remind you of your own dysfunction.
It seems like it's a means of like, kind of like manually choosing what your challenges ought to be by, doing therapy, specifically doing therapy that's designed to deal with the traumas. But that also could be like, running your life instead of living it.
Yeah, you have to be careful that any therapy that you do is not just done in the intellect. That's a that's a point that a lot of people stumble on, and that's because there's all kinds of nifty therapies that may or may not work. They work for some people, they may not work for a lot of people. But if the therapy is all intellectual, then you're not really solving the problem. It has to be solved at the being level. That's where the problem needs to be solved. You have to be different. So if you're you know you have some of these therapies that people who are feeling insecure and inadequate take, and basically it's like cheerleading. You're fine, you're great, you're good, and you put on your refrigerator door, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm good. And you say that to yourself 20 times every day, and it's rah, 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 that sort of thing. Well, that can help some people. Just that positiveness can sometimes help people. But sometimes also people can just intellectually say, okay, I feel better now. I feel this and I feel that. But they're not really changed. They're the same person they were. Their intellect is now going to pretend that they're better because they want to be better. And that works for a while until something comes up that triggers that fear that they didn't get rid of. And then, they crash back. So then they're maybe worse off because it's like, well, I tried and failed. Am I going to fail every time I try? Well, that's more negativity pushed back at the same person, and they get into this negative thing. So all of the therapies carry a downside with them. If they don't work, they can leave you in a worse space. All right, I did what they said. I tried. I did this, and that didn't work. I'm really a bad case.
I can't even do therapy right. I
Yeah,
fail at this
right.
too.
Exactly. I can't even do therapy right. I can't get this. So now you're worse off than you were before. You've got another failure to add to your long, long, long failure list.
Yeah.
Instead of something positive to add to your very short little positive list. So all the therapies have a downside. You have to not get into them intellectually. If you want to do the cheerleader thing, then do that. Stay positive. Keep saying positive things about yourself and positive things that are going to happen. And when I go meet these people, they're going to be fun. They're going to be fine. We're going to get along just great. But say it often enough. If you just say it once, you won't believe it. It'll always be just your intellect. But if you say it 300 times, it'll begin to sink into your being level. You'll actually start believing it more. It's just repetition. You know.
So that's what I wanted
So,
to ask you about because um, you told me like 2 years ago, after I had a near-death experience, that I was, understandably pretty depressed because made a big mistake. It was my fault, and how I would interpret it. But that firmly state to myself, I do not want to be depressed. Now, of course, if you were to tell any psychologist that, or anyone with like social wisdom, they would say, well, that's overly simplistic. That's just But how does like what are the mechanics of this? I'd like to know. Here's my guess. You're modifying future probability that life is going to be better. You're taking a moment during all your suffering and your misery now to state to yourself that no, I'm going to be better, which probably creates a little bit of space, positivity.
mhm.
And also, if you do it with feeling and conviction, then you are, I think, at that moment, marshaling up the energy to make a change. And
Hmm.
it requires you to be a bit different because you can't continually say, I mean, it's hard for anybody who's depressed to say, yeah, I'm worth it. It's just like, even if I talk to people who are depressed, I'm like, let's hear you say it. And they will just do anything they can to not just say the words, just to say it out loud. It's not that hard. Can you talk about how it works exactly?
Yeah, you got it. You have it just right. When you say those positive things, that's just a one piece of positive information that you've got in they stack up, they start to pile up. So if you just say it once, well, it's nothing. But if you say it 100 times, it starts to it starts to pile up. You've heard it over and over again. It becomes, but again, you have to say it. You have to mean it. You can't just intellectually say the words. You have to get into, you have to feel it. You have to say, I'm going to get over this. I'm going to be better. I'm going to, whatever. You have to say it. You get the feeling of it. I know it. That's what it is. It's going to happen, and you get into this real serious thing with it. And you do that over and over and over and over and over, and it starts to change you. You're modifying future probability. You're putting energy into being different, to being positive. Pick out some very specific kind of result that you want and just work toward it like that. And the reality will shift around to make that happen. It just will work, but you can't just say it with, I'm just mouthing the words. That doesn't carry any power. You have to really mean it. You have to feel it. You have to, this is the way it's going to be.
I will not be
And you
depressed
can see
anymore.
it.
I will be
You
a
can see the
millionaire.
picture. You can look at you can look at the slope going up. That's me. That's me getting better. You know, as that slope gets higher, I get more and more confidence, and that's me getting better. And you can see a picture of it, and there you are right here. You're not too high up yet, but there you can see that line just moving on up there with time. So visualize it, think about it, but you have to mean it, and you have to do it often, and it will help. Just something as simple as that will help. The repetition and the fact that you are really putting energy into that as an outcome. Because if you just say it intellectually, your intellect, you say, well, I got to get over this problem. And your intellect says, yeah, sure. Right. You just nullify it. You nullify it the instant you say it, you nullify it. So you have to put more effort into it than that. You have to feel it.
In a way, and maybe it's kind of like you've got your foot on the accelerator for your depression and misery, and yet every time you have to do that, you got to take your foot off, even just to
Yeah.
apprehend it. And then if you really start to feel it, you're touching those brakes a bit, and over time that loses speed,
Yeah.
right? You bleed
Yeah,
off
it
some of that.
does. It works over time.
And
It
this is
does.
because you're adding the information. Because I imagine we all have these energetic types of metaphors, but in the driest way we could put it, it's that we're skewing the amount of negative information that we're saying about ourselves by inputting genuine, felt positive self-promotional info.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. But if you mean it and you say it and you say it often, you go into a meditation space and you say it, there's only one way to go from here, and that's up. You know, here I am. Okay, I got this issue and that issue, but I don't need those issues. Those issues are dragging me down. I need to go beyond those. I need to feel differently. Next time I meet Susie, I'm not going to be afraid to talk to her. I'm just going to have a conversation. If she doesn't like it and runs away screaming, that's okay. I'll deal with that. If she does like it, well, that's good, but I don't really, it'll be whatever it is. And that's all right. But I'm just going to say, hi, Susie, having a nice day. And I won't stutter, I won't be afraid. I'll just say something and see what happens. And then when you see her next time, do it. Just say something, see what happens. And if it happens, it's good. Well, good. Build on it. If it isn't, say, well, got to try that again. What did I do wrong? And you say, well, I really was pretty nervous, and that probably showed. My confidence really didn't show. My nervousness showed. So I'm gonna try it again. next time. So anyway, you just keep working on it. It's
Mm.
like you got a problem, then okay, accept it, deal with it, work on it.
So
Yeah.
if we were to then, because a lot of times I will enter a meditative state, which means I'm going to lay down under some covers and listen to binaural beats. It means I'm doing it. But then I will try to give myself, I'll visualize myself getting, light or however.
Hmm.
But I think if I'm doing this without feeling, then I'm leaving so much on the table. If I was imagining that, but also saying to myself, parallel processing while meditating, I really am going to get better. And then all
Yes.
those thoughts that come up that argue with it, like, yeah, but you don't have enough money. You're going to have to go back to school and you're afraid you won't remember anything and how you're going to pay for it. All of that, I can just say, well, yeah, well, let's put that
Not
in
a
for
Yes,
now.
well, not about that. That'll work itself out when we get there. Right. It's not
Got it.
about that. Because that's not the point. Those are facts. Those are just facts that'll work out however they do. We're
Hmm.
talking about me and who I am. That's different.
So in that way, like one ought to use language to encode this positivity while
Yes.
dealing with the negative feelings that come up to try to disrupt this process. And on top of it, you can imagine you're getting, light into your body or onto these
Yeah.
problems. But in that way, if one was meditating, even while walking or anything like that, that would be a clear, effective way to parallel process.
Absolutely. When the negative stuff comes up, you may just say, well, okay, that could happen, but I'll deal with it. There's other ways. There's always another way around that. Okay, I don't have the money now. I'll have the money 2 years from now or 3 years from now. I'm going to get there. I'm solving this problem, and okay, there's going to be hills I'll have to climb, doors I'll have to open, but I'll deal with that when I get to them. Right now, I'm fixing I'm fixing me and my attitude, and it's going to be positive. I'm going to go do this. So if you have those kinds of conversations often and you mean it and you give it power, it will change you.
And I think as a less advanced means, when you find it just too difficult to summon up the energy to argue with those negative feelings, I've noticed, like, I have a great deal of insecurity about my memory, for instance. I will just sit there, try to remember something, even enter a meditative state so I could just, all right, I'm going to bracket off a bit of
Mhm.
time just to focus, just to, be. And then I'll feel that intense fear coming up that I can't remember it. I can't remember it. And then I just allow it to hit me, peak and then trough and dissipate. Then I try to remember something and now I'm able to do it. And my memory will rebound and improve for weeks at a time. That to me signals that
Yeah,
that's a less advanced form of I'm going to deal with these counter arguments, these negative thoughts. Instead, I can just feel the negativity, experience it, and see that it has no teeth.
yeah. Well, the whole reason that you have trouble remembering is because you fear that you'll have trouble remembering. That's the whole reason. There isn't anything organic about your memory. See, you believe there is. You believe, oh, there's something going on in my brain. It's deteriorating, and
Story of
that's
my
not
life.
it. That's not it at all. You're just not remembering because you have a fear that you won't remember. So you just say, well, I'll get by. I'll get by. And I'm at an age where my short-term memory is not as good as it was. My long-term memory is pretty solid, but the short-term memory is pretty sketchy. Things that happened, 10 minutes ago or an hour ago, sometimes disappear. I have trouble with words. I'm thinking of a word and I can't quite get that word to come up. But I find out as soon as I stop thinking about the word and do something else, then the word comes up. But it's me not not being able to come up with the word that makes the word not come up. You see? So it's you that are thinking about, well, my memory's a problem. My memory's going away. And it's that fear is what creates the problem. You'll notice as soon as you relax and think about something else, then the word does come up. It comes up after you relax and let go of the fear. So it's the fear that's the problem. Nothing wrong with your mind or your memory. It's just the fear that's the problem. So you accept it and you say, well, sometimes I can't remember things. Well, I'll just go on. I'll say it some other way. I do that a lot when I can't remember things now. Um, I'll just find some other words to say it in, and it's not quite as good as if I had the right word for it, but it works. So it's like it's not a big deal. All right, people who get older start to have problems with short-term memory. That's just a fact. All right, so I'll have a little problem with short-term memory. So it's sort of like being dyslexic. Doesn't matter. You
Mm.
just deal with it as you deal with it, and however you deal with it, it has to be good enough.
I
You
imagine at
know,
the times when it's most critical, when you really need it and someone is hanging on you, or if it must happen, that you remember, you will be given a little bit of help remembering.
yeah,
Is that
typically it,
so?
yeah, typically it doesn't cause any problems. It just takes care of itself. You know, I remember one time when I was in Austin, Texas to give a talk. Second talk I ever gave. My first one was in London. My second one I think was in Austin. And I was invited there to talk about MBT and things like that. And I had this cough, this really bad cough. I couldn't even get a sentence without coughing. It was so bad I couldn't even carry on a conversation. And I'm in the back room waiting for, I got 5 minutes to go on, and I'm in the back room. Don and Keith are both back there, and we're waiting for the time. And then there's an audience out there. It's in a bookstore or some kind of thing. While I was there for this event, they made a few other little events for me too. So it's like, how am I going to do this 2 day lecture if I can't talk? And I got an event in 5 minutes, and I can't even get a sentence out. And I thought, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Right now, talking to them, I can't get a sentence out, but we'll see. So time was up. I walked out, started to talk. I coughed a couple of times in it, but basically got through the whole thing. Not a problem. By the time I was over, cough wasn't gone, but it was better. And then it got worse again. So just when I needed it, it went away. Not went away entirely, but just away enough that you could get by. In that in that lecture that you first saw in New York, I had a cough. I coughed a lot through that. I don't know if you remember it or not, but maybe it was a different one. This was the first one I did in New York. It was a couple of days long. It was um, I saw you in New York too, you and Edge at a different one. That was different. It's probably not the same. No, Dennis Menrick was there. He was only at the one.
Yeah, I was there then.
So that was the one.
There
And
was like a locker room and then the stairs, and then it came around.
yeah, you had to take your shoes off to go
Yeah.
in. I
Yeah.
coughed my way through that whole thing. I must have coughed 100, 200 times. Keith took every one of those coughs out on the editing. He deleted every cough in there that he could. But in any case, it was the same thing. I couldn't speak, but I got by. It got by, and it usually does that. So when you get right up to the moment where you need to be able to perform, then you can perform well enough.
So the system is sympathetic, but isn't it? I think we would all imagine that, the High Lord Tom would be able to, if he wanted, eliminate the cough with his will. Or is that just something that's not to your interest?
No, I think the cough, it's not to my interest in the sense that I don't do those sorts of things because I thought that the cough was a test. Would I just walk out there being unable to speak and start speaking? Or would I say, I can't do this, cancel the event? And I thought that I'd just go do it and see what happened.
Do you think it had it tied into a greater purpose, which was that you maybe had a fear of public speaking and that you needed to overcome it? Or was it more so that you felt now it is my time to present this to the world and I'm going to have to go through a little bit more difficulty?
Yeah, I didn't have a public speaking issue so much as it was, this was the time to do it. I'm going to go do it, and we'll just see what happens. I'm not going to say I can't do this because I can't speak. Right now I'm coughing so bad that I cannot get a whole sentence out, which I couldn't moments before I started talking. So it's just like, well, we'll see. I'll walk out there, I'll stand up, and my mouth will move, and we'll see what happens. So that takes courage to do that, because otherwise you'll go there and you cough, you won't be able to speak. So you kind of, sorry, folks. But I didn't see that in my mind. I would go out there and I would deliver this, and it just was going to work. So even though I couldn't talk at that moment, I was able to talk a minute later when I had to stand in front of people. I could get enough out. I still had it. I could still feel the tickles, whatever, but I got through it.
So it pays to
So
be relentless.
yeah, so it's just a matter of being fearless. Yes. So I think that was a test just to see whether I would fold or just go be bold, right? Be bold or fold. And I was bold. I didn't fold, and it worked out all right. So I had that happen multiple times. So I didn't really fuss with it. I figured this is mine to deal with. I don't want to take it away. You don't want to live in a bubble where you create your own reality in this bubble with your intent. You have to let stuff happen and deal with it. That's how you learn. So I was going to learn something from this cough.
I guess the
And
dealing with it is what's like a live PMR means of using one's intent. Instead of imagining we're going into some space dealing with graphs and like laser beams and in an out of body way. I mean, that can also be occurring, but it might even be just simpler to say, I'm going to do this anyway. I'll see what happens. I'll try my best. And
right, yeah, just not to be afraid that you fail. It's the fear of failure that gets a lot of people. They don't want to fail. So it's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Right now, I'd say I won't be able to get a sentence out, but I won't know until I do it. So I just got up and did it, and it worked. And then the next day, I gave the whole talk for the day, and I did cough probably 20 times during that, but it wasn't a big deal. I got through it, and it wasn't so bad that it made it people couldn't listen to it. It worked okay. So it's a matter of just being fearless about to go do something and see what happens. Don't say, well, I don't want to walk up there and go, sorry, make a fool of yourself. Oh, I feel so bad. It's none of that. I'm not going to feel bad. I'll just go do what I can do. It'll happen however it happens. So it was a test. So I passed the test, and I got that test several times. And every time I just went ahead with it. And it always worked out.
I think a lot of people are addicted to their phones. And if you may or may not know, a lot of the content that people will get will come in like 10, 30, 1 minute, 60-second clips. And, I think everyone's getting probably many Americans are burned out from our addiction. I personally will find that I always have to have something on in the background to listen to, that it's hard to even have motivation without it. Like I'm afraid to, go into life raw without stimulation. Um, how negative is this? And what would you say in overcoming it? And do you have anything to say about learning to focus and overcome malaise?
Yeah, well, I guess to overcome malaise, you need purpose. You need to feel that, you have a purpose. And at work, you definitely have a purpose. There's people there that depend on you. And if you are nice to those people, if you have respect for those people, you will help them. You will help them. You will increase the quality of their life, even if you're the only one that does it. You will help them. And that's important. And because of that, you're going to get your body up and you're going to get in there and you're going to go do what you do because of people depending on you. And so you have to have purpose. Find, what am I What's the purpose? Well, your purpose there isn't so much, oh, I go into work, I can make some money so I pay the bills. But the purpose is you're going to affect people's lives. That's what the purpose is. You're going to go there and you're going to do your job. And because you're there and somebody else who doesn't have your sensibilities and doesn't have your ability to treat these people with kindness, it would be worse. So you're there with a little bit of light for them, and it's important. They need a little bit of light. They get scarcely a little bit of that. So any little bit they get is important. So you have an important job. You're affecting human beings. And that's enough purpose to get you up out of bed and off to work. And it also will then make you happier when you're at work because you'll feel like you're doing something good and useful. You know, it's not like, well, these people aren't the movers and shakers of the world. They're just a bunch of people who've been thrown in an institution. That doesn't matter. They're people. They deserve respect. They deserve to have a life. And the cultures, probably for at least half of them, conspired to take their life away from them. So at least you can be nice to them. I'd say that's a very valuable thing to be. You know, and if all you did in your life was be nice to people in institutions, that would be a good life, well, you know, well worth living. That would be valuable just for the little bit of joy, a little bit of positivity that you left behind for people who desperately need something positive. That, you know, that's a good thing. And you're open to other things so that, you know, you don't belittle yourself about, you know, you're not changing the world. You know, you don't have to change the world. You just be helpful to people as you can. That's what you're supposed to do. And other things will happen as they do.